Hi there, it's Clarky here from the Phobic Flyer. Now today I have a special guest in the studio with me. I have James Golding, who is the creator of Soteria'swings. So James, welcome to the studio.
Thanks very much, Andy. Very happy to be here.
Excellent. I started learning to fly in 2013 and it took me 7.5 years to get my PPL licence due to a debilitating fear of flying. I created this channel to show some of my training and what's next for my flying hobby and to prove that it is possible to overcome a phobia. Welcome to the Phobic Flyer YouTube channel. What is Soteria'swings?
So Soteria'swings is basically an app that I've created from my own experiences as a PPL pilot, which helps to facilitate various things that you would need to do as part of the flight preparation process. So we have takeoff and landing performance is really the key thing, and that's what stands out from other apps that exist. Like most pilots that I know of, at least, would use SkyDemon.
Yeah, it's well known, isn't it?
Oh yeah, of course it is, for almost every part of the flight. But what it doesn't do is takeoff performance, so takeoff distances or landing distances, and that's what Soteria'swings has been designed to do.
Right, okay. Yeah, I've noticed that is something, I'm obviously a new pilot and as you know, I had a flight phobia. I'm very nervous about takeoff and landing information to make sure I get it right. And that's something, and I don't know why, SkyDemon doesn't do it. So your app is filling a big void in the market, I think.
That's what I intended, certainly, at least when I first came up with the idea, at least anyway. It
Brilliant.
was, well, firstly to say, you know, it's incredible that you've obviously A, overcome your fear of flying, but B, had created a whole brand to sort of support other people through that as well.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Cool. Thank you.
No, pleasure. But
tell us a little bit about yourself, James, because people want to know who you are, you know, what you do, and why have you done this?
So well, obviously I'm James, you know, for those that didn't catch it to start with. But so I am actually an aeronautical engineer as my sort of educational background.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, so I went to Loughborough University to do that, and it was a 5-year degree.
Okay.
So that was a master's in engineering,
Yep.
and as part of that, I did an industrial year. So I did an internship actually at Airbus down in Filton.
Wow.
Just across the road from where Bristol Aero Club used to be based.
Yeah, Bristol Aero Club is a club we're both in, isn't it?
Yes, we are, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it obviously used to be based at Filton Airfield.
Yeah.
That shut down, and it's going to be a housing estate. Yeah. But that's where of course, yeah. It's where I used to work. So I was on the internship for a year.
Yeah.
Then I came back to do my master's, essentially the 5th year of the degree, and then started on the graduate scheme there. And it was actually at Airbus that I first had the idea of learning to fly, but also was first put in touch with someone from the Bristol Aero Club.
So that's where you met them, actually, when they were flying out of Filton on that massive runway. Oh, right, okay.
They were already based at Staverton by the time that I joined them.
Okay.
And that would have been, 2018? I think I had my first flight in January or February 2018.
So you started flying after me and got your licence before me?
A little bit, maybe. But actually, I had my record, I think, was like 14 lessons in a row cancelled because of the weather.
Oh, yeah.
Really bad.
Yeah.
But then, in the end, what I decided to do was, you know how you hear people doing like intensive flying courses?
Yeah, yeah.
So they do it within a few weeks.
Yeah, you can go to America and do that as well,
You can,
you?
yeah. So that's what I actually did in the end.
Did you?
So I found an instructor that was obviously able to help me with that and did most of my lessons, because what I found was that the more breaks you have in between lessons...
That's my problem.
Yeah. The more you, as you know then, the more you end up having to repeat stuff.
Definitely.
And I thought, I'd budgeted for a certain way of doing it, but then I realised actually it's taking me longer to do it because I've got like weeks, maybe even longer in between sessions, in between lessons.
Wow. Your day job is slightly different, isn't it? What do you do for a day job?
It is. So actually at the moment I run my own web design business, and actually I built the website for the Aero Club a few years ago.
Right, yeah.
But as part of that, I've also taught myself to code, and that's where Soteria'swings came in, not just from a point of view of actually having the piloting idea for it, but also I actually taught myself to code from scratch.
Wow.
And that was, do I want to spend 150 grand up to potentially getting someone else to build it?
No.
Money I don't have as well to start with anyway. Or do I want to learn to do it? And personally, I love a challenge.
Yeah.
So I taught myself to code from scratch, and that's the front end, the back end. Obviously, we're talking on the Android platform and on the iOS platform as well.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why I wanted to make it as applicable as possible to most pilots. That's why you need to cover those two platforms, really.
Okay, thanks. So tell us a little bit more about the application itself, soteria'swings. Am I saying it right? Soteria'swings?
Yes, soteria'swings. So it's actually based off Greek mythology, I believe. And so Soteria is a goddess of safety, deliverance and preservation from harm. Normally, when you have something that's named after a character in Greek mythology, it actually has quite a lot of... Just the way it comes across is brilliant.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about that, and actually that's where I came across Soteria, and I thought, do you know what? The fact that it talks about safety, preservation from harm, that's exactly what I want to do. That's why I created soteria'swings. And so it made sense, and the symbolism within that is brilliant.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, James. Tell us a little bit more about the app itself. So what does it actually provide you, and how do you use it?
So the app has been... I've designed it with a certain principle in mind that you can get anywhere with 3 clicks or fewer, because what you don't want is to have it so complex, for example, that users... Yeah, and if you want to use it in flight, you don't want to be clicking through, hang on a sec, I've got to click here, but then, do I click there instead? There's none of that. It's as straightforward and as simple as the interface could be made. But as we mentioned before, it does takeoff performance, landing performance.
Just explain what that is. So someone who isn't a pilot and doesn't know anything about flying, what does takeoff performance and landing performance mean?
So when you're planning a flight, you need to know that you can safely operate from an aerodrome. And part of that is knowing if you've got enough runway available in order to make the takeoff or landing safely. So the app will take various things into account when it's doing the calculations, and this all goes into creating a takeoff or a landing performance calculation. So we're looking at the runway slope, what the surface of the runway is, if it's wet, what the weather conditions are like. So if we have a headwind, a tailwind, what the outside air temperature is.
That's a key one, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, the hotter it is, the worse the air performance is, the more runway you need.
And if people have eaten too many pasties, then, and they're weighing a little bit more, it takes all that into consideration as well, does it?
I am definitely guilty of eating a few too many pasties sometimes.
Brilliant, yeah, same here, mate.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
But so it'll take all these things, and it will also take in, like you sort of touched upon, pilot weights, passenger weights, baggage, and fuel on board as well. And all of these things go into spitting out, if you like, or calculating a takeoff distance. And so the takeoff distance itself is the point at which you're stopped at maybe one end of the runway to the point at which you reach 50 feet above the ground at the other end of the runway. And you need to know that you can do that within the length of runway you have available. And so that, for the takeoff side of things, is what soteria'swings will do. And especially if you're, for example, a low hours pilot or a student, or just someone that has an interest but doesn't really maybe fully understand it, it will show you all of that. It will even show you a bit of a graphical representation of the runway, how much distance you've got remaining. And so you can just visualize things a little bit better.
Excellent. And the landing performance is similar, but just the other way around.
Essentially the opposite, yeah. So you start off at 50 feet above the ground and you come to a stop. And in theory, that is what it will tell you. But what it does do also is it takes into account factored and unfactored distances as well.
Excellent.
So an unfactored distance is essentially if you as a pilot did everything so spot on the procedure that...
Of course,
we're all that perfect, aren't we? And so if you did it perfectly and every bit of data you entered, as in the wind, for example, that didn't change even slightly when you actually made the calculation, that is what you should be able to achieve. Whereas the factored distance is all based on the CAA's data. So takeoff, we're looking at 33% on top. Landing, we're looking at 43% on top.
Just to make it safer.
Yes, exactly. And it takes into account things like if you did put in the wrong information, but also if the pilot didn't quite do things right. For example, if you were to be at the foot of the runway, as I always say it, and you put full throttle on, and that's obviously putting the throttle all the way forward, but you don't have your feet on the brakes when you're doing that, you don't reach full power until you've got a certain way down the runway, because your aircraft starts moving as the aircraft is throttling up, as it's powering up. And so that adds a distance on, and things like that will be included in this factor. But it gives you both, so you can have a side-by-side comparison.
So before we take a look at the app, I understand that you've had quite good reviews, and the BMAA gave you a sort of stunning review, didn't they?
Yeah, so I actually have been in touch with a few people from the BMAA, and I actually got a little bit of a editorial or literally a review done in the magazine that comes out on a regular basis for them. And yeah, there was a lot of positive feedback from that, and I was actually invited recently, in January that is, to speak at their annual instructor seminar as well. I did have a lot of nods, a lot of smiling faces, a lot of useful feedback as well. And one of the things that I will always do with soteria'swings, like, as you know, if you think you're standing still, you're actually moving backwards. So what I will always do is look for enhancements and look for new features, look for if there are any bugs in it. I'm fairly confident with the app, of course, but if there are any things, and if someone comes across it, I'll always make an effort to update it. Yeah. And so throughout this process, I've been getting some excellent feedback. I've had ideas for suggestions, and I'll show you a few of the new features that I have implemented from feedback that I've had as well.
Brilliant. Okay, James. Right. Now the time is to have a look at soteria'swings. Show us what it does.
Absolutely. So this is my pride and joy, I must say. Not the tablet, the app, obviously.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Although it is a very nice tablet.
Well.
So when you open the app to start with, you'll be greeted, if you're already logged in, you'll be greeted with a disclaimer. And that is quite simply just something that means you know that you've got to input the data correctly. You know that, like with SkyDemon as well, and all the other apps, you will be agreeing to a disclaimer as part of it. Yeah. So you'll be greeted with that. If not, you'll be greeted with a login screen. And you have to agree to the disclaimer, of course, to be able to go and access the app. So that would be clicking on the green tick. If you click on the red cross, you'll be logged out. But we'll click on the green tick so we can show you a few bits and bobs.
I was worried then it was going to ask for my password because I have no idea what it is. It's about that long, so that's good.
Well, that's why I say added security in it, longer password, but it's so secure you can't even access it yourself.
Exactly.
So the first thing, and obviously I touched upon it before, that people have come up with suggestions. As part of the beta test process, someone suggested this, that when you go into the essential area of the app and you go into settings, you can actually set your default preferences for a number of things.
Brilliant.
So we're looking at the moment, we're looking at, units of measurement. So altitude in feet, you could quite happily select feet or meters if you wanted to, although I would always say altitude in feet.
Yeah, same here.
Distance in nautical miles, length of a runway in meters. I wouldn't really know what a runway is in feet. I mean...
Well, you're too young, aren't you?
So,
I know both.
Fair enough. So you have access to all of these things, and that is especially on the continent, for example, some users would probably say the speed in miles an hour as opposed to knots, and so you want to make sure that it's catering for everyone. Yeah. That's why that's in there. But also the other sort of really great feature I would say about this is that you can select your default country, your default aerodrome, and your default aircraft.
Okay.
For example, obviously you and I both fly with the Bristol Aero Club.
Yeah.
What that means is that rather than having to go through and select Staverton or Gloucestershire Airport every time we want to fly, and rather than having to select the same PA28 each time from the list of complete aircraft, you can go and select just the ones you want in here, and you don't have to keep reselecting them.
Great.
So if we go here, choose country. Now you can search by, for example, GB, country code, United Kingdom, Europe as well, although currently it has all countries, 14 countries, 13 of which are in Europe, except for New Zealand as well. So right now we've selected the default country. Can do the same for aerodrome. So if I just type in Echo Golf Bravo Juliet, come up with Gloucestershire Airport.
Yeah.
And then also we choose the aircraft. So if I go PA28, should we go 151, 180?
Let's go with X-ray whiskey. Let's go with
X-ray whiskey, 151, yeah. So now if we demonstrate a calculation for you, so you can see what I mean.
Yeah.
So first things first, at the moment, you're greeted with an empty screen. It just says you've not made any calculations yet, because obviously there are none made.
Yeah.
So we'll click on the plus.
Yeah.
We have to choose a country, but because we've pre-selected our default preferences, we don't have to go and search through them again.
Yeah.
So United Kingdom appears by default. So same with the aerodrome. But just to show you a little useful feature, if you've got a default one selected, but you want to use a different one, either you can start typing straight away. So if I say EG London Heathrow, let's say.
Okay, yeah.
Heathrow Airport, you can just type in and it will, of course, just let you search as normal. Or if you want to clear that, you just click on the X and it will clear the initial default value, and then you can go and search again. So if I do you know what? I'm just going to go for Gloucestershire Airport again.
Yeah,
we know it, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Choose runway. Do you have a preference?
27.
Runway 27. Well,
tarmac.
Exactly, and it is the one we use most often.
Yes,
so.
it is.
Okay, so now aircraft. We will go and choose. At the moment, this is another thing to mention actually. At the moment, we have standard aircraft, and so what you can see here is we've selected PA28151. But the aircraft that are standard within the app are based off a standard operating manual. Obviously, that's for increased accuracy because we want to make sure that it's manufacturer data as opposed to something that someone else uploaded online.
Yeah.
But another useful feature of the app, which we'll see in a little bit, is that actually you can create your custom profiles. So your aircraft will potentially have a different radio, more equipment, less equipment, which might affect the balance of it. And therefore, you need to make sure that you're actually using the right aircraft for you to make it that little bit more accurate as well.
Yeah.
So we're on the input screen now, and we've got a useful little widget here actually, which you can drag around anywhere you want, if you want to, or you can just leave it where it is. But what it will do is actually tell you, it's like a totting up of the weight as you go, and it'll tell you if you're overweight. So let's just say if I say the pilot is a ton in weight, which we know is never going to happen.
Yeah, well.
So what you can see, when I've typed in 1,000 kilograms on the pilot weight, the little widget, the actual weight has gone red because it is greater than the max takeoff weight of the aircraft, which is the number on the right-hand side.
That's clever. Yeah.
So, and that, it just encourages you to think whether, We'll go with that for now, just so you can see another useful little safety feature of the app. So if we say full tab, you can choose a custom amount. Yeah. You can select tabs, which
that's really useful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, that is really useful.
That can vary slightly from aircraft to aircraft, but you can see a little statement here that it just assumes that it's 2/3 of the tank capacity, which is more or less what tabs is on an aircraft. But as I say, you can put a custom amount if you wanted. Yeah. And then full is fairly obviously full tanks. So if we go for full, we say, let's just say arbitrary 10 kilograms of baggage. You can input the QNH as well, which is obviously another important figure to use, as well as wind direction, wind speed, and outside air temperature. Great. So if we go, do you have a preference? 10, something or other?
Let's do, let's say 180 at...
For the QNH?
Oh, sorry, 1013.
1013, yeah, fairly standard there.
Yeah, exactly.
Wind direction 180, did you say? 180
at 10 knots.
Wind speed 10 knots. Outside air temperature, how are you feeling?
That's going to be 15 degrees.
15 degrees, okay. And it's worth noting that with these particular entries, if you don't put anything in, it will assume ISA conditions. Okay. So, no wind, whatever the ISA temperature is at the altitude you're at, that's what it will assume, which is not particular, unless it happens to be that there's no wind and it's 15 degrees at sea level on the day you're doing the flight, it's not accurate. No. So if I click calculate now, you come up with a pop-up warning saying that the max takeoff weight has been exceeded, and actually by how much as well. Wow. So you can see
that's great.
We're exceeded by 701 kilograms.
That's a lot, isn't it?
It is quite a bit. But that's what happens when your pilot weighs a ton,
literally.
It
does, yeah, it does.
Sometimes you say it metaphorically, we've just done it literally as well.
Get on the keto diet, Mr. Pilot.
Yep. Well, so what it then allows you to do is, because you might be only a kilogram over, in which realistically, so you'll be all right, probably. It's never. I'd never advocate flying over the weight limit. I would always make sure I've got a good few kilograms under, because you never know what might happen. No, you might have to land, for example, at an aerodrome where, like maybe a diversion, where the runway is a lot shorter and you don't want to be heavy. So you obviously want to make sure that you're not overweight, but it will allow you to perform the calculation anyway. But you have to click ignore, and that's why it's in red, because you really shouldn't ignore it. But if you want to, you can still do that. But we're going to do the right thing.
Put the proper...
Yep. Oh, no, that's Q&H. So if we scroll back up, let's say the pilot actually just weighs 80 kilograms.
Yeah, it's a nice weight.
Yeah. We'll say both pilots weigh 80. Okay. And now you can tell the little weight in the widget's gone back down to what it should be.
What did we put for fuel? Did we put fuel
full.
was full? Okay, so that's why
we could go
it's
tabs if you want as well. So if you put tabs, you can see the big difference.
Yeah, that's good. That's actually really good, because if you've got a load of people that you're taking out the next day, you may have to message the pilot who's got the aircraft before you and say, do me a favour, don't fill it up above tabs.
Yeah, because you've done the calculation. You know how much takeoff distance you need, or landing distance, and you know what you need to tell the pilot the day before. Exactly.
Obviously, the weather may change, but it's still indicative, isn't it? I think.
Oh yeah.
That's really, the weight is a really
100%.
Good. Yeah, that's really good.
So if I calculate that now, what you see is on our little home screen for takeoff. It's the same for landing, weight and balance, and then a combined one. Now the combined is where you do takeoff, landing, and weight and balance all in one go.
Okay.
Almost as if you're planning the whole flight as opposed to just one journey.
Yeah.
So we have the tile, which gives you a rough, some of the key figures.
Yeah.
Starting off with, the aircraft, the runway, the airport.
Yeah.
And most importantly, what your takeoff distance is. And here we can see it's green, so we know we've got enough runway. We're not short. But this is the description, not the description, sorry, the
graphical representation.
The graphical representation, that's the word. This is the graphical representation that I mentioned before. So the grey bar at the top is how much runway we've got available.
Oh, wow.
The factored and unfactored distances are the 33% that's added on based on what the CAA says in its safety information. And you can see quite literally that in that, with two pilots, with tabs on runway 27 at Gloucestershire Airport.
You're laughing.
You are laughing. It is a big route. I mean, you can get private business jets on that.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a problem with a PA-28 with two people and tabs.
Do you know what, though? Because I'm still, whilst I'm a confident flyer, I'm not confident in going to airports I've not been to before, which is something I need to get out of. This app is going to help me do that, because if I want to go and land in a grass strip, whilst the PA-28 is a very capable aircraft and it's got great performance, that app is going to give me the confidence whether if it's a grass runway that I can go on and know that I'm going to be able to get in there and I'm going to be able to get out of there as well.
Yeah, that's exactly the motivation really for me building the app. And there's another interesting little feature for the results. If I click on weather, yes, you've got all the data that you input here, and it even tells you whether you've got a headwind and crosswind. So if
crosswind's important.
Yeah, so you know roughly speaking what the situation is, but even more so, you have a little graphical representation of that,
which just in your head makes it absolutely obvious where that headwind's coming from.
Exactly. So you've got an idea here of this is where I'm flying, this is my direction of travel, this is where this is where the wind is coming from. And that obviously is just, data's great, but the visual, especially if you're in a hurry, you just want to know what.
I like that.
I don't want to have to work out what the data's doing in my head.
Yeah, I like that. That's good.
So we also do have a weight and balance thing as well, which I could show you as well if you'd like.
Yeah.
So follows a similar process to start with. We select the aircraft. So in this instance, we'll select PA-28 151 as we've done, just because it's a bit easier, a bit quicker. So if I select our similar configuration, so 280 kilogram pilots, no pilots weighing a ton. We'll go for tabs again. We'll go for baggage 10 kilograms, might as well. Do you want to select a flight duration?
I'm going to fly for 46 minutes.
Okay. Well, I'll pop a 0 in there just for prosperity.
Okay.
Don't have to, but I like having numbers in both. That's just me, a bit of the perfectionist. So if I click on calculate now, similar tile will come up, and again the weight is green because we are underweight, which is what we want. But we have a live weight and balance graph.
That's great.
And now it's worth noting obviously that this kind of feature does cross over with SkyDemon and many of the other apps out there. So weight and balance is something that most of these apps will do. but it's simpler to implement because you don't actually need to know anything about the aircraft. You just get the pilot to input it all,
and then tells you yes or no. Yeah,
exactly. Whereas with performance, you need to have a reference. You need to know where you're starting, and then you use the weight, you use the weather to modify that starting value. But you need to know that value, and that comes from an operating manual.
Yeah.
And some operating manuals will just give you a single figure. Like, for example, the Icarus gives you a single figure for, I can't remember if it's grass runway or a concrete runway, but it gives you one figure for a certain set of conditions. Whereas for our club's aircraft, you've got a chart where you have to draw lines across from one step to the next.
Yeah, that's right.
Some aircraft, you'll be given a data table. But because there's no one consistent way of doing it for performance, it's very hard to build that into an app as a feature to let a user just do it themselves.
Yeah.
Which is why I spent a lot of time compiling everything into the app. It's a bit of a labour of love for me, is this.
And to be honest, those weight and balance graphs that you do, and when I did my skill test, I had to do it. I did it 3 times, and I got 3 different results because I was slightly out or slightly up or down with the pencil line, and it was just, you know, mad for the performance. I meant, sorry.
No, of course.
Yeah.
And so that's why I've made sure the app does it all, really.
It does.
And so the other feature that I mentioned, when you're using a standard aircraft, it obviously is fine, but it may not be 100% accurate if you've got a slightly different configuration. This is where the newest feature of the app comes in. You have aircraft profiles. So you can actually create a custom aircraft profile.
Okay.
And it has to be based off the aircraft that are already in the app.
Yeah.
For, as I just mentioned, for the performance reasons.
Okay.
There may be a day in the future where I'm able to implement something where it can almost import a chart and convert that into performance data. But for now, it's done manually. But then at least I know it's doing it right.
Absolutely.
So we'll go to the plus as we normally do. Do you want to stick with X-ray whiskey?
Yeah, do that.
Okay. So here, this is where you type in your actual aircraft registration. That's so you know which aircraft you're talking about.
Yeah.
So if I go for... Sorry, it's hard to do it when you're looking back to front on the screen. I'm just going to type in X-ray whiskey, if I can find the W on the keyboard. But realistically, you could type in whatever the weight and balance... Or not the weight and balance, sorry, whatever the registration is. Here, this is importing the standard data that I took from the operating manual. This is where you would make a change. So, for example, if we had an extra whatever equipment it was that meant the aircraft was 100 kilograms heavier, I could put in 706 kilograms there. Fuel capacities, do you want to change those, or do you want to stick or twist?
So I'll stick.
Right, okay. Centre of gravity. So these are the moment arms. These where you can modify them as well. Because if you've got, let's say, extra equipment in
or a heavier chair that's been fitted or something.
Yeah, it will affect the moment arm.
Of course it will, yeah.
So you need to be able to change those too. So you've got the empty moment arm, so that's just obviously the empty aircraft. Front, rear. When I say front, rear, I mean obviously front passengers and rear passengers.
Yeah.
And if you have an aircraft where you've got, for example, just the one row, you will, of course, only see front. You won't see the rear passengers because there aren't any.
Yeah.
If you've got 3 rows, you'll see 3, your front, mid and rear.
Okay.
But obviously for this instance, we have a 4-seater aircraft, so we only see front and rear.
Yeah.
You can change the moment arm for the baggage and also for the fuel.
Okay.
Stick or twist with this? Or do you just want to randomly change the value?
Just change something.
Okay, so if I just, let's say the empty weight moment arm is, and these are all in percentage of mean aerodynamic chord.
Okay.
At the moment. So if I say 15.2, just as a arbitrary pluck a number out of thin air, we'll save that. So you can see we've saved the aircraft, empty weight. We click on it, you can go and make any of these changes again, but empty weight is 706 kilograms. So now, if we go back to our inputs window, we'll choose, I'll just go through this really quickly just so I can get to the aircraft bit. Let's choose runway 27 again.
Yep.
Now, what we do here is, so standard is the standard aircraft, but if we click on custom, that's when we will be taken to pick our custom aircraft profile. So we select that, and now you'll see the empty weight is now listed as 706 where it wasn't before. So it now takes into account our newest empty weight. And that is something that is, well, I've had many features requested by people from right through from the beta test of the app to current subscribers. And the ones obviously that are going to bring most value to the app, the ones that are potentially, well, I say most useful, bring most value, that's what obviously I would implement first.
Yeah.
Anything else is kind of a nice to have. But something like this, where you can ensure that the aircraft is as accurate as possible to your situation.
Safety,
or the default characteristics like country, like aerodrome, like aircraft.
Yeah.
Those, again, have all been implemented to make it a lot simpler for any user.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's really good.
So that is how you use soteria'swings. So there's also a couple of extra features which are potentially useful.
Cool.
People may not always use them, but it's nice to have them sometimes. Okay. So we have the reference section as well. So if I take, as an example, the glossary, if you're not 100% sure what, I don't know, let's look at declared distances, for example. We've got a glossary of what each of these means. So if you, for example, didn't know what LDA meant, you could go to the glossary and realise, oh, actually, LDA is landing distance available. That's the length of the runway, so on and so forth. A little bit of a useful feature, especially if you're a more inexperienced pilot or a student.
Absolutely.
The same goes for calculators. So we have little things that people may want to calculate at any given time. So if I take Great Circle Calculator, so you, let's see if that works, get coordinates. If we allow that, right now we have the coordinates of where we are.
Wow. And
if I then go and, just for argument's sake, because, you know, I mentioned New Zealand earlier, I actually, when I was on an out of business placement at Airbus, I joined a club. I was working in Auckland.
Okay.
And I joined a club there. And so I thought I'd include their data as well. And they're actually, they've also been using the app and been getting some great feedback there too.
Brilliant.
So if I now select the location, I'll select aerodrome. It was Ardmore Airport, I believe. Okay. If anyone is watching this from the club in New Zealand and it's not Ardmore Airport, I do apologise, but the name sounds familiar. Okay. So if I then click calculate, that'll tell us the Great Circle distance between the 2 points. So 9,912 nautical miles between where we are now and, of course, Ardmore Airport. The initial bearing and the final bearing, because obviously you know that will change as you traverse the globe. Yeah. And also the midpoint. You can get a midpoint address, which we can't do because we're probably in the middle of the ocean somewhere with no address. But as you can see, we do have the midpoint, and that is potentially useful, potentially not, but this is an example of one of the calculators that I've built into the app as well. You've also got crosswind, ground speed, top of descent, and a handy little unit converter as well. If we do, I don't know, distance, you can choose your units. There's a lot of units in there. You won't need to use every single one of those, but the idea is very much that it's there if you need it.
Absolutely.
So it's lots of little things, a handy little toolkit.
Definitely. And how does somebody get hold of the app? If they want to buy the app, if they want to install it, how do they do that?
The app is available to download on both the Apple App Store and, of course, the Google Play Store.
Yeah.
So for Android and iOS.
Yeah.
The app is available for both platforms. And it is a subscription-based app. So you will be charged either annually or monthly, depending on what your preference is. You get a month free trial in which you can decide before being charged at the end of that month whether you like it or not. And that's like Netflix, that's like Spotify. You put in your details, but it won't charge you for that first month.
Okay.
And so you can either choose to subscribe monthly or annually. And this is done via the website, which is soteriaswings.aero. And if you choose monthly, it's £5 a month.
Yep.
If you choose annually, you get a nice little 10% discount. Okay. So that's £54 for the year, as opposed to £60 if you were going to pay £5 a month for 12 months.
Which isn't a lot, really, for your safety in an aircraft.
Well, no, exactly. And obviously, you will always... These days, pilots spend a lot of money flying. Yeah. But for a few pounds extra a month, you can just give yourself that extra little tool in your arsenal, if I can put it that way, that just it provides sort of enhanced safety. It allows you to make these calculations and gives you peace of mind. Whether you're a student who will be very unfamiliar with these calculations and wants to use it to validate what they're doing, or you are an experienced pilot that just wants to have another thing that's ticked off. So when you're doing all your pre-flight checks, and if you would normally do these calculations, you would have to probably print off a chart or a data table, do some calculations, and even then, if you're in a rush, you might not have done it right. Whereas this will take care of that for you, or back up. If you still like to do it manually, you can, but you can use it to verify the calculations that you've done. And it will allow you to have more time to do other things as part of the flight preparation process, like checking the aircraft out, checking the weather, the NOTAMs, checking out your passengers as well if you have any. Anything like that.
Brilliant. And if somebody was flying an aircraft in America that you don't have, would you be able to add it for them? And if so, how do you do that?
So all I need to add an aircraft, and obviously as I mentioned before, it has to be done by me.
Yes.
But all they need to do is send a quick email to me attaching saying what the aircraft is, of course, but then attaching the particular operating manual. And that is all I need, as long as that operating manual has manufacturer issue performance data, and as long as it has various specifications, like empty weight, max takeoff weight, those sorts of things, then I can very simply add it to the app and issue an update. So potentially in the future there will be room to add it in manually, but for now it's a slightly more manual process as that part of it. But it would be very simple for them to get in touch and just ask me to include it.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you very much, James. I've really enjoyed that. It's definitely an app I'm going to be using a lot.
That's fantastic.
No, it is, definitely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome. I love using the app myself. Because it just makes things that much easier.
Excellent.
And it's something we all do, but it's not something we might have all thought of, is there a better way to do it?
Yeah, exactly.
But we're all going completely technological based these days. Now that years ago no one would have heard of Skydemon, and now it's very few pilots fly without it.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is something that I believe they would greatly benefit from as well.
Definitely. Fantastic. Just give me the web address again so that people can find it.
It's soteriaswings.aero.
Excellent. No, that's really good. Really enjoyed that. Thank you very much, James. Nice one.
No, you're welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to come and talk about it.
No problem at all.